Back again with the Explainer by SenseTalking. We're diving in the soul of Seoul Subscribe. Today, we're looking at a huge paradox at the heart of South Korea's economy, one that's both fascinating and, honestly, pretty tragic.
I want you to imagine this for a second. What if, once you got a job, your company legally could not let you go, no matter what? Sounds like a dream, right? The ultimate job security. Well, in South Korea, that's pretty close to reality, and it has turned into an absolute nightmare.
Because here's the crazy twist. In a country where it's almost impossible to get fired, this is how many people have literally died from being overworked in just the last 5 years. Over 1,000. So, how does that even happen? How can a system built to protect workers end up killing them?
To really get what's going on, we have to look past the statistics. We need to talk about a real person, a story that puts a human face on this whole legal mess and shows what's truly at stake.
Meet Hyo-won Jung. He was just 26 years old, working at a popular bakery, but his work schedule, it was just unbelievable. In the week before he died, he worked an 80-hour week, and 5 days before that, he worked for 21 hours straight. Just let that sink in. He was found in his company dorm, having died from a cardiac arrest. The official cause of death was a heart attack, but the real cause? Overwork. Plain and simple.
So you have to be asking, how on earth did a country end up with laws that could lead to something like this? Well, to get the answer, we got to go back. Way back. We need to dive into South Korea's really intense and, frankly, pretty violent labor history.
See, these labor laws weren't drafted by a bunch of lawyers in fancy offices. Nope. They were forged in fire, in protest, in blood. It all started under a military dictatorship that basically treated workers' rights as a joke. Then you have this incredible, tragic story of a young tailor, and it all culminates in a massive, nationwide uprising that literally forced the government to change. It was a huge reaction to just unbelievable exploitation.
You've probably heard of South Korea's economic boom, right? They call it the miracle on the Han River. But that miracle, it had a dark side, a huge human cost. Under General Park Chung-hee, the whole country was just one giant factory. And the workers? They were called industrial soldiers. Can you believe that? They were expected to give everything. We're talking 14, even 16-hour days for less than $30 a month. And get this, a huge chunk of that workforce, we're talking 60 to 90% in some industries, were young women and even teenagers, working in just terrible conditions.
And that brings us to Tae-il-jeon. He was a 22-year-old tailor. In 1970, to protest those conditions, he literally set himself on fire while shouting these words. He became a martyr. And his death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a spark. It ignited the entire modern labor movement in Korea. It was this desperate cry for just a little bit of human dignity. And that cry, it just echoed through the decades.
So all that struggle, all that pain, it finally boiled over in the late 1980s with a massive worker uprising. And the result? The pendulum didn't just swing back, it swung all the way to the other extreme. The government created laws that were meant to be this unbreakable shield for workers, to make absolutely sure that kind of exploitation could never ever happen again.
So, what does this shield look like? Well, the first part is something called Article 23. It says an employer needs justifiable cause to fire someone. Sounds reasonable, right? But here's the thing. The legal definition of justifiable cause is insanely strict. We're not talking about, being bad at your job or missing a few deadlines. We're talking about serious stuff, like stealing from the company or getting into a fistfight at the office. Anything short of that? Good luck trying to fire someone.
And if you're wondering just how far this goes, hold on to your hat. There was this one real case where a director was fired for sexually harassing 8 of his subordinates. So he sued, claiming he was fired unfairly, and he won. The Labor Commission actually ordered the company to give him his job back. Their reasoning? His misconduct just wasn't severe enough. I mean, wow.
Okay, so that's firing one person. What about layoffs? That's the second part of the shield, Article 24. A company literally can't lay off workers unless it has an urgent business necessity. And what does that mean? It means they're about to go bankrupt. Like doors are closing, lights are off, bankrupt. And even then, before they can lay anyone off, they have to prove they've tried everything else. Pay cuts, shutting down temporarily, you name it.
And this leads to some really, really weird situations. Remember when WeWork totally imploded and filed for bankruptcy? They laid off thousands of people all over the world, except in Korea. WeWork Korea couldn't fire its staff. The global mothership was bankrupt, but the Korean office just kept on running, because legally they couldn't prove that their specific branch was about to go under. It's like the law created this bizarre alternate reality.
So you can't fire people for poor performance, and you can't lay them off unless the whole company is on fire. What happens then? Well, the system doesn't just break, it starts to crack. And companies have gotten creative. They found these toxic loopholes, and the fallout from that is hitting everyone.
So if you can't fire someone, you make their life a living hell until they quit. It's this whole playbook they call voluntary resignation. But trust me, there's nothing voluntary about it. You take an employee, you give them nothing to do, or you bury them under impossible deadlines. You stop inviting them to meetings. You socially isolate them. You let gossip and humiliation do the dirty work until staying is just more painful than leaving. The goal is to make them quit so the company's hands are clean.
And here's where it all comes full circle. This is how we get back to tragic stories like Hyeowon Jung's. Because companies are so terrified of hiring someone they can never get rid of, they do the simplest thing. They just stop hiring. So teams are always chronically understaffed. And who picks up the slack? The employees who are already there. They're forced to work these insane hours, which leads directly to burnout, and in the worst cases, death. The shield that was meant to protect them ends up creating the very danger it was trying to prevent.
And this isn't just a problem inside a few companies. It's a huge, nationwide paradox. This fear of hiring has basically fractured the entire job market in South Korea.
To get around the law, what do companies do? They've created a two-tiered workforce. You've got the insiders, the permanent employees with ironclad job security, and then you have everyone else, a huge and growing army of temporary and contract workers. More than a third of the entire workforce is stuck in these unstable jobs with fewer benefits and zero security. And maybe the biggest irony of all, a system designed to keep people in their jobs is actually pushing the best and brightest people out of the country. Think about it. If you're a top performer, do you want to work in a place where you can't get rid of a lazy coworker and everything is about office politics? Of course not. So Korea's top talent is packing their bags and leaving. It's a massive brain drain. And for young people trying to start their careers, the door is basically slammed shut. This fear of hiring has created the worst job market for full-time positions since the 90s. For every 100 people looking for a permanent job, there are fewer than 40 openings. Let me say that again. A system meant to protect jobs is now one of the biggest reasons jobs aren't being created.
So this all leads to one massive looming question for South Korea's future. The world is changing faster than ever. AI is about to shake up everything about how we work. And in that new world, being able to adapt, to innovate, is everything. So can South Korea figure out a new balance? Can they protect their workers without killing the flexibility their economy needs to grow? Or is the country going to be trapped by the ghosts of its past, unable to keep up in a future that waits for no one?